Greetings, my fellow humanoid dwellers. This video is not designed to be specific on any one of these products, but I'm going to go through a general creation of an Affinity Designer curved text, move it to Fusion 360, show the CNC machine cutting it, and then have a little go back on the Mach software to show how it happened. I'm going to start with Affinity Designer. I'm going to make a 100mm by 100mm square. And since I'm going to do the text, you have to do it on a curve, so the first thing I'm going to do is draw a circle. Now once I add text to the circle is destroyed. So I'm going to center this circle for no other reason than it looks nicer in the middle. And then I'm going to copy the circle and make a second one. So that way when I put the text on the original circle, I'll still have another circle to play with. And the reason I want a second circle will be made clear when we get to Fusion 360. Putting text on the circle I found to be somewhat difficult. I have to move along the radius until I find the right spot to add it. I'm still learning this, and you can see when the little green tick applies, then I can start typing the text. I don't pay too much attention to the font or the size. I just want to get the text on there, and then I can adjust. And as you can see, as you select the different fonts, you can see what it's going to look like, which is kind of nice. We're just going to go with the basic impact. Pick one that seems to fit, and I don't want it to go outside of the box. And now I'm going to try and center it roughly. For this example, I don't care if it's perfect, just want to get it close. And now I want to set a width to the circle, so I go up and I change the stroke and make it 2 points. This is kind of interesting. You can do it. Affinity Designer lets you do things in different ways. You can go down and you can use the slider to adjust the size of the points is what they call it on a circle, or you can click on the box. I generally prefer to click in the box. I feel like I have more control. So now I have the circle and I have the text. I'm going to export that as an SVG, and I should have checked that box. And once again, you'll see why I should have checked that box when we get into Fusion 360. Fusion 360 is 3D. It can be a little overwhelming at first, but you have to pick the plane that you want to draw on. And since it's 3Ds, there's 3 planes. Like I said, this isn't meant to be a tutorial on this. I'm just roughly going over it. If there's something specific you would want, I'd be more than happy to do a more in-depth study. I'm making that circle a 100mm circle. If you remember, I made the box 100mm box, so this should fit. I'm giving depth to this circle of 10mm. And I actually pulled it away so it went to a negative depth. That makes it easier when you actually create the G code to go to the CNC machine. And once again, whenever you're dealing with it, you can either select the plane there, or you can go over and select the surface. I'm picking the surface, and now I'm going to insert a SVG. That's why I saved the last one as an SVG. The file got cut off in this video, but I'm picking the Robert, and you can see how that text came out, and that's why I should have checked that box. So now we're going to go back to Affinity, open that file again. To be honest with you, I'm not 100% sure what that box is, but text as curves, so that must be the CNC must want it as curves instead of text. And the sketch I'm just starting over. I'm going to make a 100mm circle. Select, and you right click on it, press pull. If you put a negative in this box, it presses it backwards. And we'll select the front surface again. Insert the SVG. And now you'll see we have it. Now I have better luck if I'm messing with the image. It's a little small for what I want if I don't have it on top of the circle yet. So I'm moving it away from there so I can adjust it. When you first drop it on there, it's in green, which means it's locked in place. So the first thing you want to do is select the whole thing. And then you'll go over and hit Fix Unfix, which then it turns it into blue. And once again, since it's a bunch of different shapes, a bunch of different curves, you have to select the whole thing again. Then if you pick that middle point, that's why I had the circle. So I could pick the middle of that circle and drag it up there. If I hadn't created that second circle, I would have just been able to grab the letters all at once. It would have been hard to get it centered. But now I need to scale it a little bit bigger. The scale didn't quite come through right. This is another thing. I select the one point, I select the middle. You can see the text did not scale properly. It got shifted right. So now I'll select it all again. I'll try and scale it again. I'll select one point. I'll go select that middle point. It should scale around that point. But once again it fails. This time it shifted the other way. So now we're going to try again. And this time it will work. I'm still not sure as to why it doesn't work. I play with that. It's kind of like selecting the text on the curve in Affinity. I need a little more work myself, but I'm confident enough to know that this should work. So if I do it a couple times, it works. I'm scaling it, making it 1.4 at scale, so just a little bit bigger. Fits in there. Now I have to delete the circle because I do not want to engrave the circle itself, just the letters. I want to spin it at an angle so I can tell what I'm picking, then delete the circle. Now I want to print, and now I'm going to switch to the cam. You do this for the machining portion. I'm going to do an engrave. So it's a 2D, so it's not. I have to add a tool. Chamfer mill, because I want it to be a very small point. It comes up with a very flat tip, you can see in there, so I'm going to change it to 0 so it's a point. I'm going to change the angle so it's more of an angle so we can see, and this is just for the simulation. You could actually put any tool you wanted in there, because the tool you put in the actual CNC is what really matters, but it does make it nicer to see. And now when I set my heights for the G code later, I like to do everything from the stock, from the top of the stock, which is the top surface of that. I'll go back and set the clearance height. That's right, you know it won't hit anything. You set that well above. I set that at 10 millimeters. The retract height, I go from the stock top again. And the feed height. The feed height is when the bit is moving around and not cutting. You want that. If you'll notice, I changed the retract height to 7 and the feed height to 5. I'm not really sure what the difference is between those, but I want to be able to see the levels. The bottom height is the depth it's going to cut, so we want to move that up. You can see it's well below the surface, and it would cut way too deep. So I'm going to set it to 0.2, and now it moves it almost all the way to the top. Here I forgot to select the what I'm cutting, so now I have to go back and select the letters. You got to select each individual, because each individual circle or word or letter is not a word or letter. It's just curves and straight lines. I think it would have done better when you see the cut if I hadn't selected the inner portions of the letters. Now I'm going to shift it over and do a simulate. This is kind of neat. I don't really know the purpose of it other than to make sure you didn't do anything massively wrong. If you set your layer heights right, you should be good. So I'm not going to let this simulate run the whole way. And create the G code. Or the post process is what they call it here. This is another one. You should be able to change the name, but I've had bad luck. It'll fail if I put a word in there. So I've just left it. I've created a different file for each thing I cut, and I just leave the 1001. After it's all done, you can always take it, save it, rename it. This is I have it loaded in the machine, and this is it cutting. And it's cutting way too deep, so it just makes a mess. The camera is really blurry through this. If you want, you can fast forward a little bit and get to the Mach software. I do have it sped up, so it will cut faster. What I did now is I moved the 0 over a little bit. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a series of cuts and just slowly lower the head manually until I see it's barely cutting. What I found is this is too big a router and the bit is way too big. So even though I got it to where it barely cuts, because here it was somewhat cutting, but it was still missing. But once I got it to where it was barely cutting, it was still too deep for this. I've ordered some new bits, and I'm going to just set up a simple Dremel. But I'll also have to print a mount for my CNC machine to hold the Dremel, and I'll publish that as a video also. Like I said, the camera that I used for this is really bad, really out of focus. I have got a new camera now. New videos should look better. I will, when this is done cutting, I take it out and I show you what it looks like from the front. You can kind of tell what it is. If you knew that it said Robert Sillyhead Scott, you could tell that that is what it said. If you saw that flash real quick, I tried to turn off and on the light, see if I could get a little bit different feed or different view of it, but since I've sped it up so fast, it was too quick to really tell. So, and it is backwards too. The camera sometimes flipped it 180 degrees, so it's backwards. Now I'm going to show you what I did in the Mach software. Once again, this isn't a tutorial on the Mach 3 software, but what it does do is it shows that I kept adjusting the zero axis on it. There at 0, and then every time I would run the test and it didn't cut, I would hit stop, right there, stop, and then I would adjust it to a little more negative. Then I would 0 it, and then I'd run another test. And like I said earlier, if there is something you'd like to see specific, just leave a comment and I'll try to address it. And that's really about it. It's going to finish up here. Thanks for watching.